I want you to welcome the frontman and mind behind Ghost, whose album Impera, as you know, has a nomination for Favorite Rock Album of the Year at the American Music Awards. Please, everybody, welcome Tobias Forge. Tobias.
Hey,
Hey, how you
are,
doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Wonderful. Good. Thank you so much. I'm well. Thank you so much for being with us. I know you've had such a crazy day, possibly a busy day of travel, so thanks for sitting down with us for a little while.
Well, I actually did most of my travels yesterday, so today has been a long, jet-lagged day.
Oh boy. Well, I hope we can perk you right up. We have a lot of people here who are really excited to see you. Everybody's going crazy in the chat. I was just wondering, how have things been for you recently, especially since coming off that huge tour that you had, a year of tours. I saw you guys with Volbeat back in February, and then I saw y'all again at UBS Arena recently with Mastodon and Spirit Box. So it's been a crazy year of touring. How have you felt after that?
It's been paced in a way that hasn't really worn us out, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Not in any way sort of hinting at that touring is a drag, but um, for the most part of our career pre-COVID, touring was a lot more tight. We did 6 weeks of touring. We went home for a week or 2 weeks, and then there was another 6 weeks, and it just sort of continued in this similar fashion throughout the one entire album cycle. And then you made a new album, and it sort of restarted, which is, that's very common when you're building, and we're still building, but as a result of the actual shows being a little bit more ambitious, I guess. You're also putting another demand on everyone's time and attention and funds, I
Yeah.
guess. So you end up playing less. The bigger you get, the less you play.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
I think that makes a lot of sense because I think the shows have gotten really, really great and so over the top. And I really like going to see you guys every time I can get out to see y'all. I think I remember the first time you played Barclays Center. I caught you there and taking you from a smaller stage or more of like a smaller venue to a large stage. Was that an interesting transition for you in trying to figure out how to really structure that show out and do the whole thing in front of that many people?
I've always had um an a feeling that I would like that format. That
Hmm.
sounds crazy, but it's, I as many others grew up on a diet of rock from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and for the most part, a lot of the bigger than, the larger than life bands, they were playing big places. So that was sort of the forum in which you saw the dream coming alive.
Yeah.
Um, and as professionality has sort of entered my world, and you tour with other bands, opening up for other bands, doing your own headline tours, and then you open up for a band again, and then you go back headlining. Slowly and steadily, you might get a taste, or at least a hint of what it's like playing arenas or even stadiums. And I'd say that as much as as much as coming from the underground, of course, I always like a sweaty club show,
Hmm.
but from a perspective where the idea with Ghost has always been for a production, a show, which is usually not very doesn't go very well with a confined space that is a club's stage.
Hmm.
I've always had, playing larger places has always been sort of I've gravitated towards that, and I find arenas to be sort of the happy medium. As much as as much as I like the cheer, um, grandioseness of outdoor shows and stadiums and stuff. When we've done that, opening up for other bands, I think that the one thing that I am not super thrilled about it's basically you're up against the elements. You're up against rain, wind, storms. Um, cold
Mhm.
heat in a way that in arenas it's pretty uh it's controlled.
Yeah,
I like that.
much more controlled environment. Exactly. I think you hit on something very interesting in that you kind of were supporting bands and then headlining some shows and then supporting again and then headlining. I feel like Ghost is really now in a position that they do a lot of headlining shows nowadays, arena headlining shows, which is a fantastic trajectory to be on, I think, and where you've gotten. It's very impressive. And for those shows now, what do you think it really takes to be in a touring band like you are in right now that knocks out arena shows all the time, all over the country and all over the world?
Hmm. Um, I think, I mean, I've always, for, I've always made sure that we always were a great band.
Mm-hmm.
We maybe that goes without saying, I guess some would say, but like you really have to play very well, and it needs to be a very well sounding orchestra. I think that that is like first and foremost. And I'm saying this just because over the years of having seen many, 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 many concerts with different bands, I can, honestly throw a lot of roses to bands that have done really well, but also bands on really big levels that has done very poorly,
Mm-hmm.
really phoning it in,
Mm-hmm.
um, and basically given their, 30% sort of performance, not mentioning any names.
Mm-hmm.
But as a fan, I definitely took note of that and remembered those shows as like, if I ever get the chance to play in front of that many people, never do that
Mm-hmm.
ever. Always do your best. Um, and always make sure that, you have to, I guess I have the upper hand just because, or me and bands like mine that have like an image where you can, in a different fashion than others sort of view your band from an outside point of view. Um, I try to do with Ghost everything that I want to see other bands do, or other bands, like a band that I want to see. Um, and maybe I can do that with a slight more of attention to detail, with a slightly more defined objective than if we were just like go up on regular stage, like street clothes on stage, singing about very mundane things,
Mm-hmm.
real, sort of the real sort of bands, which I love at all also.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that since everything with Ghost is so focused on show and entertainment, and just because I've sort of taken myself out of the equation, it's easier for me to see like how things should be in order to like uh, not a dull, not for there not to be a dull moment. My jet lag is sort of kicking in, so thus the aphasia. Sorry.
No problem.
I just got a coffee here. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
wow. That'll
Thank
cure
you.
some jet lag for you. That's
Yeah.
great. Talking about those shows that you're playing now, and how you want to put on a show that you would want to see. And I think that Ghost is a very entertaining band live, a lot of performance there. And I think that's really key in keeping people engaged and entertained throughout the show. For you personally, have there been times in the past year or the past few years where you've been hypercritical about your shows, or a time that you saw one of your shows or went through one of your shows and thought that could have been a lot better and I want to refine it for next time?
Every show that we've ever done.
Wow. Wow.
No, I for the sake of not feeling like we're underperforming, I do not spend a whole lot of time after a show pondering of what we just did.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people do that. And fortunately for some people in the team, we have a few people that are like that, that would sit after the show and just like go through every moment. And I sort of lean on their view, say that is there anything that really go like is there something that we need to address?
Mhm.
But I don't want to sit constantly on tour watching our show.
Mhm.
I try to sort of do that in the beginning of the tour, and then once we're rolling, it's more of a team effort. I don't know what to compare it to, but it's like being a big team of it's such so when it sort of goes beyond the design and the idea, when everybody knows what they're doing, um, it's a very much a teamwork
Mhm.
that requires 30, 40 people to work in tandem, synchronizing with an enormous amount of cues.
Mhm.
Like if you count every cue that every person has, I always try to do that, and I always try to encourage people to think like me, not to like don't ever think you can just enough is great, but don't beat yourself up because if you manage to nail 80% of yours and most people did 80, 90, 95, like the sum of the whole show was still like great, right? Or what did we have to cut the show in the middle and just turn the lights on and everybody left
Mhm.
and everybody asked for refunds? That's a shit show.
Yeah.
But
Right.
just because you missed your guitar solo or the follow spot guy sort of did a little bit of a search or something like that, shit happens.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. I think going off that, what you just said, we had Spirit Box on the show a few months ago, and they were in the midst of, or they just finished their tour with you and with Mastodon. And when
mm,
I asked them about how that experience was for them, they said, "Oh my God! Like the people that put on the show for Ghost it's a crew, it's a team. Like they all have 16 jobs and they know them very well." And so that was just really, really cool to me to hear about how everything we see on stage has a very, very meticulous and detailed build to how it actually happens, including all the costume changes you do too.
yeah,
Hmm.
it does. It's a very well-oiled machine,
Hmm.
and I like it like that. I mean, that's to echo what I spoke about earlier, the sort of flannel shirt band that just comes up and just play and don't worry about anything. I mean, as a person, oh man, I wish I was in a band like that sometimes
Hmm.
because it's so much easier. Um, but on the other hand, it's very hard to do something mirroring what I have had in mind for like a detailed show with a certain flow. If you did the Springsteen thing and just like ask the crowd what they want to hear and then you improvise the entire set list, we
Yeah.
could never do that.
Hmm.
And that is why everything is pretty rigid and uh, uh, synchronized and premeditated, if you will.
Hmm. Yeah. Also, a lot of your fans are in the chat right now talking about your concerts and telling you to come to Italy, come to Chile, wherever they want you to be. But one of the questions that someone was asking, which I'm definitely taking questions for everybody in the chat, one of them was actually, how do you take your coffee?
This is actually I don't know if okay, I'm doing this for Duff then because I know that he's money in this. This is Starbucks coffee. And for years, I'm sort of I'm a little bit antsy about really warm things. I easily burn.
Hmm.
And for years, I went into coffee shops saying like, I want a coffee that's um like, can you have this much milk in it? And they were like, okay, cool. And they put in warm milk. I'm like, no,
Uh-huh.
no, 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 no. I need cold milk. You want cold coffee? You want iced coffee? Coffee? I was like, no, I want it. Can you make me a latte? And when you have it filled up to here, you just pour that out and then just pour milk in it. That's it. That's what I want. And they were like, you want iced coffee? And I had conversations like that for years with people. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. So I always asked for coffee, and then I went by the bathroom and just like poured out coffee and just and had to fix it. And then I was at a Starbucks at right by the Flatiron building
Uh-huh.
in New York. I think we were mixing Meliora because we were right there.
Hmm.
And there was this guy at inside the Starbucks. He was just like, just say kids temp.
Kids
So
temp.
this is a
Wow.
latte kids temp. That's how I like my coffee.
I didn't even know they offered that. So you heard it here first. The Tobias Forge order is a kids temp coffee, a kids
Yeah,
temp latte. That's great.
yeah.
I mean, I can feel like I'm on the same wavelength as you because whenever I go get I mean, I'm not a coffee drinker, but anytime I get like a hot tea or anything, it's always way too hot. I always just
Mm.
burn my entire lips and tongue on it every time. So I just like put it next to me for about 15 minutes and just don't touch it. And then I just drink it after that. It's the best way to
Great
do it.
minds think alike.
There you go. There you go.
Hey,
Thank you for expanding on your coffee tastes for all of us. It's some vital information, so thank you.
it's important.
Exactly. Exactly. I want to take it back to something you said a bit earlier about the sound of Ghost, which I think has been really, really unique over the years, transformative over the years. Given your history, I mean, I know you were in bands like Repugnant for a little while, Crash Diet for a little while, and given those kind of more at least Repugnant, a little more harsher sound mixed with the Crash Diet, a little more like 1980s glam. How did your loves of those kinds of music mix to form the music that you make right now?
Originally it was just an experiment.
Hmm.
Um, when Ghost, when the seeds of Ghost were planted, it came in a very pure form of a song,
Hmm.
and a song written as I think most songwriters recognize this. You sort of just play around. You just play around with ideas, and sometimes you come up with ideas that feels slightly detached from like your current band or your current project
Hmm.
or current projects, and but they still might feel inspiring. And this song at the time had some power to it that I really liked, and that ended up being Stand By Him
Hmm.
on the first album.
Hmm.
And what ended up happening was that I didn't have a studio myself, and a friend of mine who I'd played with in previous bands, both in Repugnant and Crash Diet and Subvision.
Hmm.
But at the time in 2006, we hadn't played anything together for a while. We weren't in the same bands anymore. And I just asked him, I think we were going to hang out in the evening, and I just said, "Can I come by in the afternoon and just record something?" And he was like, "Yeah, cool." And very quickly, like, "Oh, here's the drum beats that I want, and this just give me the bass, give me the guitar," and it was just a quick sketch of the song. And he said that this is great. Maybe we can do a band again?
Hmm.
And I said, well, I mean, this song came so intuitively and it's so odd, or it feels, in my mind, sort of revolutionary odd compared to a lot of the other things that so in order for me to feel like that is a great idea, I need to write a few more songs and see if there's more where that came from.
Hmm. Yeah.
And eventually there were.
Right.
And I think that what really got me um enthused to continue writing it and eventually choosing to sort of set all the other projects aside and just focusing on this one thing
Hmm.
was the fluency of writing. It
Hmm.
felt like it was really combining a lot of the things that I like. I come from, yeah, I mean, I in my adolescence and my playing background comes from very extreme, very noisy music.
Hmm.
Um, but I grew up with a lot of melodic music.
Right.
Um, and not only rock, it was all kinds of pop stuff. Everything that was on the radio in the 80s, I've digested.
Hmm.
And so I've always had a fascination for big vocal music.
Hmm.
And with that, I mean everything from Toto to gospel to everything that has like a lot of strong, well sung vocals with harmonies.
Yeah.
Look, I like Johnny Rotten too, but um, so I wanted to combine that,
Hmm.
you know, evil-esque music, but with sort of an AOR vibe to it.
Yeah. I mean, given also I feel like the theme that you selected and the theme that you started working with early on, like the music on like Opus Eponymous and Infestissimum, like all like it is a trajectory. It kind of like goes from one to the other, and you see where the transformations happened. You see kind of where your gears were turning in that direction. Did you, was there any point that you really got comfortable in that, not persona, but in that theme and in the ghost theme and the band theme? Because at a certain point, it seems like it would be a limiting theme. It seems like something that would be difficult to generate a lots of new ideas and new music from. But you really have, and you've really expanded it into like a crazy place nowadays. So I guess my question is, how did you grow comfortable expanding the themes of the band, and where did you feel like it was best to grow?
Great question. I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think when you're, I don't know, I wouldn't say that every songwriter thinks like this, but I know a lot of songwriters that aren't necessarily in bands.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm not saying the opposed from what I'm about to say is bad, but there are a lot of bands in rock, punk, and probably in every genre that you can find that knows after a while that if we just this is the recipe that we're doing, that this is if we just do this, if we have four measures of this, four of that, and then a bridge,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be a song. Um, the same way that, as a lover of certain bands, but also as a somewhat able songwriter,
Mm-hmm.
I can pretty easy, if you told me to like write a song that sounds like Ramones, I write you a song that sounds like Ramones
Mm-hmm.
and sing like this, and sort of make it sound like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that that wasn't the way that they did it, but there in rock history, there's definitely a lot of bands that feels like they five, six, seven records in, you
Mm-hmm.
could hear that they just know that if we just start at 9 o'clock, by 1 o'clock we will have half an album,
Mm-hmm.
because we know that we don't have to do more than this. If we just do that,
Right.
it's going to be we will deliver,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're playing hard and heavy music. There's a certain degree of persuasion
Mm-hmm.
that you can utilize by just making it really loud and really hard. And a lot of people get their rocks off on that, like, oh, it's so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I like a lot of raunchy music. I like a lot of fast, heavy, aggressive music.
Mm-hmm.
But if I sat here for a few hours and just played all the things that I like, everything from Necrovore that did one demo in 1987 that I absolutely fucking worship, to Death, to Metallica,
Mm-hmm.
to AC/DC, to Ramones, to Blondie, via uh, you know, Atomic Swing,
Yeah.
I could tell you why these songs are great, because they're well written. They have a meaning, they have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I think that regardless which kind of music style you have, you still need to write songs. And just because I have made a thing out of never really, really committing to like a certain drum beat or a certain thing. And this is where I go back now to where I think a lot of songwriters feel like, no, you can never do the same thing again. And every time you record a new song or you write a new song, it feels like your virginity all over again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do. I don't know where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like this unwritten song that you're just trying to feels sometimes I feel it's a little bit like being a detective. Songs are out there somewhere in the it's like a mystery that once you get a clue and you're like, oh, and then you start sort of pulling a string out of the ground
Mm-hmm.
and you try to excavate and see what it is because it's talking to you as a writer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
I mean,
doesn't mean that you cannot control it, but it
mm-hmm.
means that if there's something wrong with the song, it will tell you. You will feel that there's something amiss or skewed with it that you
Mm-hmm.
need to fix. And that feels different every time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you want to write something that's really adventurous, and sometimes you just want to write something that's super simple. And as much as it gives you great gratification when not only writing it and recording it and listening back to it, and then eventually, if you get people to say that they think it's good, um, every time you're going to do it again, it feels like this big, the great unknown.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that I mean that makes a lot of sense. I feel like I like your allusion to detective work because oddly enough, I was going to talk briefly about Square Hammer, and I feel like songs that you have. It feels like, at least to me, as like a fan and as like a long time listener, it seems that songs where you kind of step out of the comfort zone a little bit, try something new, like Square Hammer or any tracks on Meliora, like when you had the guitar solo in Mummy Dust, and when you do Mariana Cross nowadays. Like I feel like every time that you step to a different genre, get a little more psychedelic even, and like go-go and things like that, I feel like you do gain more fans, and I feel like there is more appreciation for the music you make. And outside of what you do in Ghost and outside what you do for yourself, is there any other music that you write? That you mentioned before that you had written some music kind of outside of the bands that you were in. Is there any time that you have written music that's not for Ghost and it is just kind of on the side that you feel like you just need to do?
Um, the last 5, 6 years, I'd say that there was less of that,
Mm-hmm.
simply because some of the songs that I've were ideas that I had for songs that I thought would automatically be for someone else or something outside of Ghost has turned out to be Ghost songs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's I would attribute that to me collaborating with people
Mm-hmm.
because the way I started sort of what's the word, voyeuring. um, when I started experimenting with writing songs with others,
Mm-hmm.
like professionally, with people that I liked, and somehow we agreed that we were going to do something. Some of those ideas were songs that I had that I thought was going to fit better into the realm of what they were doing professionally. Like a lot of my best collaborations have been with people that aren't that might have used to be in bands or have bands on the side, but are their main focus is just being songwriters, and most of the time they write songs for really big pop artists.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I come, you know, in with something that I'm like, look, this sounds like a dance song, don't you think? And they're like, it sounds totally like a Ghost song. So let's do that. Okay. And then it sort of morphs into to and that has in one way of course it has padded me with a lot of confidence that I can sort of make almost anything into a Ghost song, but that also left the compass sort of like just spinning because that means that I can't really do the whole recipe thing
Uh-huh.
anymore. I don't know. I mean anymore. I've never really done it, but I can't settle on there is no recipe what 40 minutes of a Ghost record is. The
Hmm.
way that no disrespect whatsoever that a lot of classic rock records are. There many, many, many classic bands
Hmm.
have a go-to sound that they can rely on
Hmm. Right.
and have.
Hmm.
If you listen to a lot of the album number 13, 15, and
Hmm.
18,
Hmm.
there's a lot of just regurgitation of that sound.
Right. Right. Like that trademark sound that kind of follows them through their career. And I actually had a question about Impera. Somebody in the chat wanted to know about your process writing nowadays. I think more pertinently, what is your process writing on Impera as far as that album was concerned?
What I do is I write all the time in the sense that as soon as I have an idea, I always try to memorize it somehow. An idea might not necessarily be a guitar riff. It might be a vocal line. It might be a an actual words, something like that. It might be a drum thing. It might be a keyboard thing. It might be a bass thing. A lot of the songs are written on different instruments. Like From the Pinnacle to the Pit is written on a bass.
Mm-hmm.
Dies in Absentia, um, Respite on the Spitalfields, written on piano. Um, Whereas Cerise, I still have like the first recording of that, which is me. I'm just swinging my son or my daughter in a playground, and then yeah, I just hear no, that's the rats. How is it? Do 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 do. And I have that sort of I just
Uh-huh.
hum that in, and then it's like okay, that's one idea, and then I forget it.
Mm-hmm.
And then later I just like, okay, so what's this idea? Recording 357. Okay, that's a great intro. Let's build that. So I just collect a ton of ideas like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when time comes for writing, as in um, which means nowadays recording, back in the day, back in Repugnant, like whenever I wrote a song, I always had to like write it first. I have to had to learn it, like, and sort of try to maintain the arrangement in my head. Sometimes you wrote up the arrangement, like it just said, like verse one, uh, uh, the little thing, verse two, little thing plus the weird thing. And it was nothing like scholastic about it whatsoever.
Uh-huh.
But I had to like mind map it so that I could get to rehearsals, to band practice, and then it's just like trying to keep the drummer from playing and just like, okay, so guitar player, this is riff one, da, 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 and then this little thing, da 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 da. But the second time it's da 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 da, huh? And then you had to sort of explain, drummer, shut up. Okay, bass player. Drummer, can you please stop playing? And it's like, ugh. And it was this gigantic fucking endeavor just trying to get
Right.
everyone to play.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. And I think every punk rocker or death metal musician ever has gone through this. And it's just a violent, loud, um, ordeal. I loved it in so many ways, but holy shit, the violence your ears had to take in order to just get through a song and get everybody to sort of play everything. And lo and behold, like 3 months later, when you're in a studio cutting it, so you notice that half of the band are sort of like playing the things wrong. And so you have to fix things, and it's just like a big mess. Um, and that sort of lends itself to the the adolescent touch of what was old school death metal. Whereas last 20 years, 25 years maybe, when people had studios in their homes, you hardly rehearse that way. You don't write songs like that anymore. You record the song and then you play it for people. This is how the song goes. and then we can arrange it or we can do something with it. But this is what I'm trying to get you to play,
Right. Mm-hmm.
which was a big difference. Um, so where was I going with that? You have all these ideas written down, recorded, hummed in. I've memorized things, and then you come to a point when it's time to sort of put everything together. And sometimes, I mean, over the course of our career, obviously, I've spent a lot of time writing everything, but when I started inviting people to write with me,
Mm-hmm.
what we ended up doing was I I place a few ideas in some sort of presentable fashion, and I usually try to show two different things. And basically, I show and then say, which one do you like? Which one do you want to work on?
Mm-hmm.
And that person or persons usually say, that one. I think that one is the best.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we start working. And
Great.
as soon as I get time with someone else who comes in with a clear mind and enthusiasm, that gets my motor going as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very inspiring thing, and uh, I like writing on my own as well, but it's kind of like an American Pie, you know. If you play ping pong, you sometimes you want to have someone like returning the ball, right?
Right.
Um, or something to the effect of that. So, but both is fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think something else I wanted to know. Thank you for the American Pie reference. That made my day. There's something I want to know from you is that a lot of people in the chat have been also talking about costuming and kind of all of the aesthetics that boils down to in the band. Because I think, from prequel to Impera, there's a change, right? From Infacissimum to prequel, I mean, to Meliora, there's a change in terms
Mm.
of persona, but also in terms of appearance. What is the process of changing that appearance, getting the new costumes done, just the real nitty gritty of actually changing the appearance of the band for every era?
Um, it always feels like a very big thing because in the beginning it was very amateurishly made,
Mm-hmm.
and as we started um shifting and started um really having to sort of reinvent what the band looked like every time, you're not only up against aesthetics, you're also up against practicality.
Mm-hmm.
And every album cycle you learn album cycle for the reader or listener, it's like from when the album comes out and you do the tour, the year of touring, and then when the last date of the tour is, that's the album cycle,
Mm-hmm.
um the tour cycle. And you end up more than often, like something that was a really great idea on paper comes back pretty um harshly quickly when the tour starts. It's like, I can't see through this mask. I can't breathe through
Mm-hmm.
this mask. Oh, you is that important? Uh yes. Okay. And then you have to fix that. And then and then I remember like last cycles, I think, there was this issue where um like the masks, just because of just because there was a differentiation between female and male,
Mm-hmm.
in as to what they looked like. I think one of them ended up weighing a lot more, which is something that you sort of not think about when you come up with the idea. But ergonomically, it turned out to be um, a little bit of an exercise for the girls who had to sort of strengthen their necks a little in order to. I mean, it worked, but there's a lot of that sort of goes in. So now when we're slowly sort of getting into album number 6, my mind, I'm already sort of writing for that. I'm already sort of planning for that. And then you have a lot of notes like, okay, so don't do those boots. You can't do that. Oh, we need to make sure that the material is changed so they don't won't go gray after 3 weeks. There's a lot of things like that. So for every time you do it again, there's a lot of notes and changes that have to be that will alter your decision, that it's purely practical,
Hmm.
not necessarily aesthetic, however you bend that.
Um, you mentioned a few really fun things there. When you talk about next album, I guess it's always a buzz term. I feel like a buzz phrase for the new direction. I guess because I mean it all really hinges on a lot of your creativity and a lot of where you want the band to go. Where do you want the band to go next in terms of possibly thematics or even sound? Anything you've been inspired by lately that excites you for the next step?
Nothing that I can commit to here and now. I mean, I know there are a lot of things in my head and that I feel like I want to explore
Hmm.
writing and I think I think I've never really ended an album production without or left an album production without feeling like there are things that I would want to do different next time.
Hmm.
Kind of like what I just said about costumes. You try to slowly and steadily you try to perfect, but for every process you end up doing some sort of experiment that might have been a miracle, or the next time you're like, oh, so let's never do that again. Um, because recording and writing and just making a record is also it's a boring thing, but it's actually a very it's there's a lot of practical factors that will play into the result of making a record. Historically, you can if we don't talk about my band, but just historic records, it's like there's a big difference between recording in your hometown and recording a record on, a tropical island someplace.
Hmm. Hmm. That's right.
I
That's right.
mean, and none of it is better than the other. It just means two different things. And people that you work with and what state of mind you are in when you're doing it, and if you work all night or if you do work in daytime, you know, there's so many things like that. And so right now I'm more about vibing. Like I'm trying to build a new vibe for writing this record now.
Hmm.
Um, you know, um, just sort of see to it that I don't end up repeating myself
Hmm. Yeah.
and do something else and just evoke a few of the good things from past and try to eradicate some of the things that I didn't like.
Hmm.
And once more, you try to do it perfectly.
Hmm.
It's like being that sort of person that gets married from 6 times. Like this time, it's really gonna be great.
Gonna be perfect this time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
She's the one.
Yeah. There's no other person. Yeah, exactly. Um,
Can't believe I found another one.
I think I wanted to talk to you a bit about also the technical side of things, right? So I think we talked about the thematics, but on the music side of things, and specifically more on your vocal side of things, because I think we've seen a big transformation in your vocals on music early and music new from Opus Eponymous to Impera. How do you think your vocals have transformed? Or maybe how do you think the songs have transformed to change your vocals in a way?
Practice
Hmm.
has changed a lot. Uh, I've never really taken any lessons. Um, the few lessons that I've taken has been you can count them on one hand with 2 fingers. And one of them was because I had totally lost my voice. So I
Wow.
had to have like a vocal coach coming in and just to sort of get it started.
Hmm.
Um, and other than that, I've never really had a vocal coach to sort of teach me things. I've sort of learned myself, and obviously practiced a lot. But of course, I don't know how many shows we've done, but 800 maybe, something like that. And of course, that changes your technique. However, one thing that has always been a little bit annoying to me is that um, I I tend to do a lot of progression
Mhm.
when I'm in the studio that will um, um, enhance range or technique, just because the song needs it. So, you try to nail something, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I didn't know I could sort of do it like that. And then because of, obviously most music nowadays is not like one take wonders. You sort of we try not to sort of fix it, but
Uh-huh.
obviously you do it many, many times. So you do like a very, and obviously I do a lot of dubbing, as they say. Classic Joe Ramone thing. You sort of sing everything three times, and that's why it sounds that sort of sounds chorusy like that.
Right.
And so you end up singing every hard part many, many, many times. So you have it stacked up and layered. So you have those three perfect takes that will gel together very well. Um, and then all of a sudden, when I go out on tour and singing through a mask is not great. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes you sort of that puts a limiter onto vocals pretty dramatically,
Mhm.
which is kind of annoying.
Mhm. I think something I also wanted to ask you, kind of on that wavelength, is around kind of the new sounds that I feel like I was listening to Impera when it came out, and I feel like I was listening to the songs and I was like, oh, that's a new sound. That's a new vocal unlocked, I think. One of those in particular was the first note on Kaisarion when you're kind of yelling to introduce the song at such a high pitch that I was like, I had no idea that that was a capability. For something like that specifically, can you tell me about doing that in the studio and recording that a few times over?
I think that is a perfect example of what we just talked about.
Yeah.
Like, um, for as long as I've had Kaisarion in my head, um, as a big sort of fast opener, um, I always sort of envisioned this big screen. Um, First, as a placeholder, uh, on the demo, I wanted to have like Roger Daltrey, the scream that he does
Wow.
on is it Won't Get Fooled Again, I
Won't get
think it
fooled
is.
again. Yeah. Uh
That
huh.
wah! When he sort
Yeah.
of like just destroys his voice.
Uh huh.
That would have been like the best there. And even to the point where I was like, are we at a level where we can sort of ask him to come do it, or should we sample his thing, or no? What are we gonna do? And Floss, the producer, he was just like, just try, just try to do it. Obviously, it didn't end up being the same thing, but when you start um experimenting with something like that, it just you try to find something new that it's at least is you.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that we did it that way. Um, I think it ended up cool. I'm not like Rob Halford, who can do a lot of that. Wah! I don't do a whole lot of that stuff. Um, so yeah, it felt like a new thing. But that's the thing with Ghost as well. Like for being like a metal hard rock band,
Hmm.
we're doing a lot of things backwards. Like one of the big things
Right.
for this record that we just made, number five, was that double we had double kicks,
Hmm.
which is like fundamental, like fundamental metal
Oh yeah.
is. to have like double kick. No, no, no. On our first record, we had like a complete Appetite for Destruction drum kit. It was like
Yes.
one bass drum, one snare, and one tom. It was like the minimal, like the most minimal
Mhm.
kit because I had this idea. I really want, I'm a big fan of Appetite for Destruction. I wanted that sort of simple caveman sort of setup. And then for every record, we've expanded. And I remember someone asking me something similar to what you just said a question or two ago, probably just one question ago because I've been ranting for a while. Like, what are the things that we're adding for the new record? I was like, a double kick drum.
Ooh, fun. Oh, that's
Yeah.
exciting. That's exciting. I like
Yeah.
the evolution there because, you mentioned before, you listen to Stand By Him, it opens up with that drum, not solo, but drum track. And you just kind of are taken with the simplicity of it. And I think that was really the charm. And I like how it's transformed now into possibly double kick, possibly an evolution each time, getting a little more complex, but also the melody is still there. And I really enjoy that. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like from a culinary point of view, it's trying to, if you sort of take people to uh to a remote, maybe isolated island, and you're just there's nothing but sand here, and then you sort of introduce like salt, you know.
Yeah.
But
Right.
you sit there with like parsley and stuff, and but you sort of give them that every year you sort of add something to it, like make a fire, and you don't have to eat raw meat. We can actually like make turn it like crusty.
Slowly blowing your drummer's mind every year, every album.
Yeah, with one new tom
Like,
at a
oh my
time.
God, there's a tom that stands on the floor? That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah. That's my thing. Yeah.
There are, Tobias, I have so many more questions for you, but not enough time, unfortunately. But I do have a few more things that have been pouring in from chat and other things for the future. But from the chat, there's been a lot of talk, maybe from the same person, but maybe from multiple sources. I haven't been looking really, really closely. But everybody wants to know about Mary Gore.
Hmm.
What's the timeline on a possible return? If there is going to be a return, what do you think about it?
The Return of Mary Gore.
Hmm.
I don't have a timeline for it, but he's somewhere, or they. Um, so, but yeah, I can't really. I have a lot of things on my plate, but not ruling anything out.
Cool. It's good to hear. I think last thing I wanted to know from you is just generally in your listening habits. Have there been any artists that you have come to really, really enjoy lately, or any artists, old and new, that you have really found a love for and appreciation for recently?
My most recent turnaround, I would say, is Marillion,
Hmm.
which and these are records from the early to mid '80s, so it's like doesn't feel very revolutionary. But for me, it was a big thing because I ended up I mean, I've known about them forever and never really liked it. I always thought when I listened to it, it sounded like Spinal Tap, but without the jokes. So it wasn't even funny. And I love Spinal Tap, but the part of what makes it so great was that there was really fun lyrics, as well as fun and playful music. And so that's what I thought Marillion was. And then all of a sudden, I just had this epiphany. It was like, wow, this is great, great records.
Cool.
And I think that that was the biggest turnaround for me, just because I felt like I can't believe I missed what was I listening through?
Hmm.
Kind of wax thing that I have in my ear up until I finally understood.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the beautiful thing, isn't it? Things, don't hit you in one way one year may hit you in a completely different way another year, and change like that over
Yes.
time, which is really great. Tobias, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us today. I wanted to say, just as a huge fan myself. Thank you for continuing to put out some of the most genre-changing music that I've heard in the past 10 years. And it's been such a pleasure talking with you. And we'd love to speak with you when you're on your tour. If you're in New York at any time, let us know. We'd love to have you on the show in person.
I would love to come by.
Great.
Thank you
Tobias, good luck also at the AMAs in 2 days. Good luck at the Grammys this year. Congratulations on the nominations. And hopefully we'll see you soon.